Yeah, when they're burning churches and the head of the BC Civil Rights Commission says burn it all down? I mean, that person sounds like a dangerous lunatic. Who is that? What is going on?
That's what I love about Tucker. He doesn't beat around the bush.
I know.
Tucker called a dangerous lunatic with the BC Civil Rights Association. I mean, how insane is a civil rights association when basically they're saying it's your civil right to commit arson? Our beloved boss, Ezra Levant, was on Tucker Carlson on Fox yesterday. And once again, Ezra knocked it out of the ballpark.
Now, we'd love to go inside Canada tonight, but we can't get there. It's like 1985 Albania. It's a closed country. So instead, we're speaking by satellite tonight to Ezra Levant with Rebel Media within Canada. He joins us now. Ezra, thanks so much for doing the show. What is going on in Canada? Serious. I mean, it's hard to believe what's happening in Canada. What is this?
Well, I'm reluctant to use the word Kristallnacht because we're not there yet. That was the night of the broken glass in pre-Holocaust Germany, where they smashed and burned and killed Jewish synagogues. It was a precursor to the Holocaust. Obviously, we are not that far gone yet. But what do you call it when literally dozens of churches are being systematically vandalized, torched? There was one fire in the BC interior that wiped out a whole village of 250 people, 2 people dead, and it is not yet determined who caused it, but it was in an area where other churches have been torched, so it may actually have its first victims. The crazy thing is this is so explicitly an anti-church hate crime wave, and yet Justin Trudeau, who is normally the first and the wokest, waited a week before saying anything, and he literally said, that's not the way to go. That was as tough as he got. He introduced an anti-hate crimes bill in Parliament that's targeting mean tweets and Facebook posts, but literally you have church after church being torched by Antifa-style terrorists, and he's almost silent on the matter, and his right-hand man finds it understandable. I think these are dark days for religious freedom in Canada.
Yeah, when they're burning churches and the head of the BC Civil Rights Commission says burn it all down? I mean, that person sounds like a dangerous lunatic. Who is that? What is going on?
And she hasn't been sacked. That was over a week ago that she said it. In fact, various board members of her Civil Liberties Association have supported her. By the way, these churches often have Aboriginal, Indigenous congregants, and they're saying, don't burn our churches down. It's the Canadian equivalent of when Black Lives Matter burns down Black-owned businesses in Black neighborhoods. That does not help Black people. In Canada, most of these churches are Aboriginal focused, and you often have, in one case, white Antifa-style vandals filming themselves desecrating a church. And the trouble is, from the very top, it's either silence or tacit support.
Yeah, and I'm ashamed to say that American Christian leaders mostly have been silent about it too, and I wish they wouldn't be. Ezra, I appreciate that report from Canada. I hope sometime to be able to visit Canada once the borders open, but in the meantime, thank you.
Thank you.
Now, we'd love to...
You know, Sheila, I think Ezra really nailed it when he compared the churches that cater to Aboriginal people. They use it for weddings, funerals, community centers. So who are we saving right now? And contrasting that to what happened last summer in many cities in the United States with Black Lives Matter protesters going into Black neighborhoods and burning down Black businesses. Yep. How did that advance the cause of social justice rights in the U.S.? How appalling.
Well, it's one of those instances of, you know, like in a horror movie when the phone call is coming from inside the house. The phone call is definitely coming from the inside the house once again here, where you have a bunch of white do-gooders, by and large, telling Indigenous people what's best for them. And these white do-gooders are saying, your church isn't what's best for you. You're not capable of making a decision about what church you have in your community and the church that you attend. They are part of the same problem that led to the residential schools, where they think that they know what's best for Indigenous people and how they should live their lives. And they don't have a moment of self-awareness when they are running around burning churches built by Indigenous people, attended by Indigenous people, beloved by Indigenous people, that Indigenous people look to when they are dealing with the trauma, this generational trauma of residential schools. Many of them turn to their faith and their religion. That's what it's there for. And then you've got these activists saying, no, 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 I'm here to rescue you. They're living out this dream of being the white savior and burning down their churches for them.
Yeah, and as Ezra mentioned, our Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, Sheila, he would normally be the first and the most woke when it would come into commenting on a place of worship being burnt down. And his language, it basically boils down to, hey, it's not cool, man. And his little buddy, Gerald Butt, says it's understandable. And Sheila, the question I pose to you, it's more than 20 churches, I understand, that have been vandalized or incinerated. And could you imagine if it was just 2 mosques, 1 mosque? You wouldn't be able to hide from the media and political outcry day after day after day. And I don't want any place of worship torched. I want to be clear about that. But the double standard, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned it in the morning meeting. Why aren't we addressing this as though it were terrorism?
Yeah.
These are, if you look at it through that lens, these are terror cells committing terrorism in Indigenous communities. They just happen to be doing it to Indigenous Christians, so nobody seems to care. Or churches that are completely unrelated to the residential school system because they don't care about the residential school system. That's just their excuse to attack churches, like they attacked a Polish Catholic church in downtown Edmonton. No relation to anything. And Pope John Paul II, St. John Paul II, sorry to my priest who may or may not be watching. He was the most pro-Indigenous pope literally in the church's history. Yep. His entire 1984 trip was just a reconciliation apology tour. And they vandalized his statue in front of that church. And it was an inner city church too. So it's like, you're not attacking affluent white people, that's for sure.
Well, can you blame the Antifa types and whatever who are torching these churches when you have a Gerald Butts and a Prime Minister Trudeau and that woman that Tucker, that's what I love about Tucker. He doesn't beat around the bush.
I know.
Tucker called a dangerous lunatic with the BC Civil Rights Association. I mean, how insane is a civil rights association when basically they're saying it's your civil right to commit arson, all right? And meanwhile, turning a complete blind eye for the last year and a half of Canadians having their actual civil rights trampled on because of these crazy COVID fines that we are increasingly getting. Sheila, I just can't believe it, and I can understand why these vandals and arsonists are so emboldened when you have the people at the top saying, no biggie.
Yeah, or they're like, I get it. Maybe this isn't the way, but I get it. I understand. Like, that is not the proper response to religiously motivated terrorism, which is what this is.
It is.
It is. And, the apologist left on the church burning issue sure were not happy with me when I took a picture that I took of a church in Batnaya, Iraq, and put it side by side a church in Edmonton that had been vandalized. And one had ISIS graffiti and one had graffiti that had recently been placed on the church. And they sure didn't like pointing out that they were apologizing away things that ISIS does to churches in Iraq, or at least ISIS did to churches in Iraq. They didn't like realizing that they were behaving like the Canadian Taliban. They didn't like that dose of reality.
Wow. Well, as Tucker said, dangerous lunatics indeed. That's what they are, Sheila.
Well,
I think they're mentally ill and they have access to gasoline.
Well, and how long? That's the thing about these anti-religious nut jobs. They don't understand the comings and goings and the day-to-day life inside a church. So in my church, my parish priest lives in the rectory under the church. He's got his offices down there, and there's some banquet halls and stuff down there. And he lives down there. They converted some office space so that he lives down there. It saves money. He's taken a vow of poverty. So if they come to burn down my church in the middle of the night, are they going to kill my priest? Are they going to burn him alive? Because that's the potential here when they do these things, because these anti-religious nuts don't realize that that's a normal practice in a lot of churches, that the priest lives in the church or adjacent to the church. So when does this stop? When some priests die? When the night caretaker dies, when the cleaning crew dies, when Susan from the parish council, who's in there collecting the weekly offering to take to the bank, when she dies, when does this stop?
No, that's a great point, Sheila. And in the Department of a Perfect Storm, we have regions of Canada that are having record heat waves.
Yep.
The last thing you want is a burning building, because there's a chain reaction effect, isn't there?
Yeah. Yeah, I can't believe, but then I can believe that we have politicians who are saying stuff like, it's understandable. This is probably not the way to handle it, but it's understandable. Like, I can't believe that that's where we are. And it's almost homogenous when it comes to the mainstream media. They are saying the same things. And that's why Ezra had to go on Tucker. I don't think anybody is more attuned to the church burnings than we are. We're sending people out to cover the church burnings and vandalisms, and it's hard to keep up because there are so many. But there's such a lack of interest in telling the victims' side of the story in these church burnings in Canada that the only people within Canada in the mainstream who are interested, well, there's really none. Ezra went on Tucker because the Americans are hungry for the other side of the story, and you can't get that from the outside looking in if you only consume our mainstream media.
Oh, hi. That was a clip from our Rebel Daily Livestream. It's hosted Monday, Wednesday, and Friday by the big boss man, Ezra Levant, and Tuesdays and Thursdays by me, Sheila Gunn Reid, and my good friend, David Menzies. On the live stream, we talk about the news of the day, we show some videos, and we interact with our viewers at home. We stream at 12 noon Eastern, 10 Mountain. You can find us on YouTube, Rumble, Super U, and Odyssey.